Have you ever noticed how the moments you feel the most calm, not the most accomplished, but the most calm, aren't the moments you're winning? It's not the promotion, it's not the money, it's not the likes on Instagram, it's not the validation. It's usually something much simpler. Like you're walking outside and your body finally exhales, or you're moving in a way that feels natural to you. Or you say what you actually mean in conversation without rehearsing it in your mind first. And for a second, you feel regulated, like your nervous system is actually relaxing for once. Here's the thing. Success can impress your ego, but freedom regulates your mind, body, and spirit. The thing we're all afraid to say out loud is that many people who we deem successful still feel like they can't turn their brains off and find peace. They've made it, but have they really? For many successful people, it's like having 30 apps running in the background at once. And it's because their life has a recurrent theme. People who strive endlessly may ask themselves if people approve of them, if they performed correctly in every situation, if they are actually safe socially, and if they are accepted. These are the things you say to yourself when you're trying to survive. But to hell with all of that. If your peace and sense of self depends on approval, then you're not free and you couldn't be free. In this case, you're being managed by other people like a puppet, and they don't even know they have the strings pulled. Isn't that something? So let's get one thing straight. Your nervous system doesn't care about your resume. It doesn't care about your goals. And it doesn't care how good you look on paper. Your nervous system cares about if you feel safe within yourself. That's the game, and that's the real way to win. But at this point, you might be thinking you're secure within yourself because you have all of these nice things and accomplishments to represent it. But in reality, modern life teaches you to chase safety through symbols, money, status, certainty, aesthetics, and control. That's why you can hit a milestone and still feel anxious. You just became a shinier object in a capitalist world, but it doesn't mean that you feel truly secure. The point is that freedom of movement, freedom of choice, and freedom of expression regulate the nervous system more than any external success metric ever will. When you can move how you want, you'll open up to life. When you can choose what you want, you can breathe better. When you can express what you want, you feel like you actually exist. Although, when you lose those three things, you become more like a controlled animal. You become trained by society and others. Anxiety is often the body reacting to a lack of freedom and clear direction. If the body wants to move one way, but we say, no, this way, after a while, the body will rebel. This is why controlling environments make people weird. We don't like to be controlled, obviously. That's why rigid cultures create fake personalities, because they don't allow proper integration of the shadow. That's why walking on eggshells makes your body tighten up, because your body knows you're lying. Because your biology is noticing that you can't be fully yourself. So just as it is important to say that stress breaks down the body and the nervous system, suppression does just as much damage. We often suppress parts of ourselves to fit in, but fitting in is super overrated and pointless. You can fight with the wall, I don't care. Because fitting in is sold as a safety valve, or even as socialization. But fitting in is also expensive because to fit in, you always have to put something under the bed. You always have to sand down your edges. You have to monitor your sense of humor, your opinions, your intensity, your curiosity, and ultimately, your true presence. And the crazy part is that we act like that's maturity, but I wouldn't call banishing parts of yourself maturity. I think that's what's coming into Adulthood is about reintegrating the shadow parts of us that we've deemed as unacceptable for society to see. If you'll notice, the most successful people typically have an unapologetic nature to them. We project our shadows onto them, and they become our idols, or people we follow earnestly. They represent qualities we have but won't show. So, fitting in is a trade. You pay the price with pieces of yourself. And I get it. Social intelligence is real and it's everything in life. There's always a time to read the room, but there's also a moment where reading the room turns into you leaving yourself. And a lot of people live like that permanently. They never feel like home to themselves. You don't want to be in a perpetual state of people pleasing. If you're always being appropriate, you're never being alive and you're probably not taking enough risk. Trying to please everyone is dumb. Not because kindness is bad. As a matter of fact, we need more of it in our divided society. And it's definitely not because generosity is bad. It's because the underlying logic is terrible. We might say, if I'm liked, I'll be safe. But that's just fear. You want to be liked because you are afraid. Trust me, I've been there. When you ask yourself in real time if something landed, or if someone seems upset with what you said, even if it wasn't a bad thing you said. When you shift and change according to the emotions and feelings of others. When you ask yourself if you're being too much or not saying enough. This is hypervigilance, a form of anxiety that many people deal with but don't want to talk about. This causes a sort of calm on the outside, but exhaustion on the inside. This is simply constant bracing in anticipation of rejection. But it's important to let yourself know that if you're afraid of disappointing people, you're already disappointing yourself. If you're afraid to disappoint people, you're already disappointing yourself. So, the biggest flex in life is having unapologetic power. Being unapologetic doesn't mean you have to be a jerk. It doesn't mean being alpha or hyper-masculine, which is always a facade. And it doesn't mean dominance either. It simply means you allow yourself to exist how you want to exist. You stop shrinking your voice at the end of sentences. You stop laughing at things you don't find funny. You stop saying, I'm sorry, when you're actually not sorry. So, it's important to understand that stability is what the nervous system craves, because when you're stable internally, you stop trying to control outcomes. You don't need to win every interaction, because there's no prize. You don't need to be understood all the time. You're complex and everyone couldn't understand you even if they tried. You don't need to be liked by everyone in the room because that's also shallow and not something we should aim for ever. If you want to regulate yourself, I honestly think the Holy Trinity is freedom of movement, freedom of choice, and freedom of expression. Think about it. Movement regulates your body, keeps you healthy. Free choice regulates your mind. You don't feel trapped. And expression feeds your spirit. If you move freely, choose freely, and express freely, you become hard to destabilize. When you move how your body wants, you release tension you didn't even know you were holding. This was true for me when I stopped heavy lifting. I realized that I was only heavy lifting because it was an ego habit I picked up in college. But really, I'm a runner who likes to do calisthenics and go on hikes, all things that are better for longevity anyway. And like I said before, when you can choose freely, you stop feeling trapped. If you feel trapped, that is the fastest path to chronic stress. And when you can say what's true for you, you stop creating an internal split of your personality. Suppression creates anxiety because it creates a division inside of you. There are a few more things to notice here when it comes to suppression and expression. It is said that we often project our own unique qualities onto those we look up to because they might be expressing themselves how we would like to. This is very real once you see it. Have you ever admired someone without knowing exactly why? Yes, you saw their talent and achievements, but as those things are really symbols for deeper-rooted human qualities, it was something more you saw, maybe their freeness. They feel like they're not asking for permission to be themselves, And when you watch them, something in you wakes up too. This is the source of inspiration. So whenever you feel like you admire someone, ask yourself. You might find it's because you recognize a version of yourself in them. You're seeing what you could be if you stopped inhibiting yourself. That's why charismatic people are magnetic, because they are coherent and expressive, not perfect. Perfect is the enemy in almost every endeavor. This is why society is attracted to different expressions of true confidence. I mean, you've got Prince and Michael Jackson, and then you have Leonardo DiCaprio, Taylor Swift, and Stephen A. Smith. All of them are titans, but they are all uniquely confident in their own way. Now, these are celebrities, but we see the same things in everyday life with people in our vicinity. When you meet someone who's completely themselves, your nervous system gets confronted. You immediately think about how dangerous it is the way they act, and you might find it proper to stay small. Or you might think of what's possible for yourself and yearn for expansion. And take note of the person who downplays a free spirit by calling them arrogant, too much, cringe, or an attention seeker. Because most of the time, they wish they could be like that. Or maybe they are like that, but haven't shown the world that side yet because they are too scared. Put a spotlight on someone else's cage and you'll catch flack every time. But it's not about you, it's about them, like most instances of criticism. And the ones who love you when you're free, those are your people, because your freedom gives them permission to be themselves. So what do you actually do with all of this information? Well, I'd come back to it when you have time to really internalize this message. But one mindset I've been focusing on is one that the underrated Seattle Seahawks organization focuses on, which is the next play mentality. In other words, you can make many choices every day that have a big impact over a longer period of time. So just ask yourself simple questions every day. What do you actually want to eat today? What do you actually want to wear? What do you actually want to listen to? What do you actually want to do first thing in the morning? Freedom begins when you stop ignoring your preferences. Second, I'd start to move like a human as much as you can. We aren't machines that only should focus on work. We need to walk, stretch, run, hang, and even crawl. Let your body remember it's allowed to move without a purpose, because movement without performance is one of the fastest ways back to yourself. Not everything in life needs to be optimized, or else it'll feel dead and dull all the time. Next, focus on telling the truth about the things you like, even if they are quote-unquote weird. If you don't want to be social, tell people that. If you don't agree, disagree. Life becomes easier when you don't lie. That's what setting you free in biblical terms is about. And finally, notice where you shrink yourself. When do you go quiet? When do you become easygoing, low maintenance, or even invisible? So yeah, I'm not saying success is meaningless. It's everything for those of us who care about legacy. But we have to be honest about its inability to actually keep us sane and fulfilled. Give yourself permission to move, permission to choose, and permission to express. Choose something today that makes you feel free, and watch what happens. We're put on this earth to explore, which is what freedom is about. So keep that in mind from here on out.